Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadeina, head of growth at saas.group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is Niclas, co-founder of Younium, the subscription management hub for B2B companies. And this is getting more and more crowded, this market and the amount of tools there are. So really excited to talk about it today with you, Niclas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. It's a great area to be in. Maybe I don't agree with you on it being crowded, but let's get into that as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just by the whole situation in SaaS and B2B in the recent year even, I mean, who wouldn't want somebody to tell them where to cut costs, right? Or to pay a little bit of money to save a lot more at the end. So yeah, before we get to it, maybe we can get into your background and the whole inspiration behind the product first.
Sure. So background within SaaS software for the last 20 years. I guess like the inspiration for the product and the service is really real life experiences, both for me and my co-founders. I think we spent quite some time, in that domain of like CRMs, ERP system, financial systems, and always within B2B and the more sort of enterprise side of B2B as well. And one of the things we made just before starting Younium was really to implement a system for that, and sort of went through the market and looked through it all and just saw that it all looked so perfect and done for all the scenarios when everything is just going well and it's going great and it's all viral, it's all online, it's all credit cards, it's like no problems. And I guess to us it was really not what we were used to. We were used to it being a bit more not perfect, maybe in negotiated terms. It was a bit like you did the first deal and then there were upsells and how did they align, and there were just like different scenarios, and we figured like, hey, this seems to be an area where there's no real product serving that specific niche, and we just felt like maybe we can be that option where you can have an advanced B2B business or selling to advanced B2B businesses and catering to those needs. So, for instance, how do you deal with multi-year deals rather than how do you manage coupons to make a very distinct separation? I just felt that advanced B2B seemed to scare a lot of companies off. So we figured maybe this is, where we can fit in. So that is in short, I think. So we were we knew what we wanted to do from the start, I would say, and really drawing upon our own experiences and not a lot of research. I mean, you still have to figure things out and make things work. But it certainly helps if you sort of experience the problem yourself.
Right. So did you have, I mean, the problem that you're solving is pretty clear, right? But did you have to pivot at any point? Because on one hand, sometimes when a startup is getting built and the product is being developed, well, founders realize that solution doesn't really fit the problem that they thought there was at the beginning. But on the other hand, sometimes they decide that, well, this problem is not really big enough or valid enough for the market they're selling. So did your problem or did your solution had to be iterated or pivoted at some point?
I think we've held a fairly consistent line over the years. I mean, we've done a few minor back and forth around that, but in general, I think we've stuck with it maybe deliberately as well. I think that has been one of the success factors, that we haven't given up, too early. I think we can all be in that situation where you feel like, is this really going to work? If I go back to my, journaling notes from 2018, 2019, there's a lot of doubt, but I think we've stuck with it and sort of had like the successes along the way that, kept us going. But I do know we had one case where we were looking to sell outside our ideal customer profile, who's really B2B SaaS software companies. We're talking to a big, more classic manufacturing company, and you you quite easily get swept away by it's that big logo. You enter the room with a lot of people, and they seem to think you're doing a really good thing, right? And we were actually just about to sign, and then the pandemic hit, and then they pulled sort of no more costs lever. So it all stopped, and looking back, I think that was a really good thing, because I think it served us really, really well, being very, very niched and sort of not straying away from our ideal customer profile. But it sure would have been easy to stray away, when you're small and you see that big, shiny success in front of you. It's not easy. So I think we were a bit lucky there. But in general, I think we've been more or less building and on our line.
Okay. All right.
Not a lot of deviations, actually.
Interesting, because I mean, when you listen to a podcast, or when you read posts on LinkedIn, I think all the founders are kind of looking for that one solution, like what to do. If it works, should I just keep on doing it? Or, if something doesn't work the way I planned it, should I pivot? And
Mm.
I think it's so interesting that there is actually no one opinion. Like, just yesterday, I had another podcast, and I also asked about a pivot. Like, was there a pivot? And what they said was that after 2 years, they realized, well, maybe nothing is working just as we wanted to. So we decided to pivot faster. And now, on the other hand, you're saying that maybe, you have to grind for a bit longer to see if it actually works or doesn't. So there's really no one recipe for success.
I guess like yeah. I mean, it's a good thing it's hard, right? Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. So that's how I usually try to think about it when it is hard. And I think that is a very valid point as well. I think we're being like fed with a lot of like ideas and perspectives that are like there's only one way of doing things, and I really hate that. And more on a personal side, why I wanted to do this was really to sort of prove that, okay, you can be like me and you can start a company. That was my personal journey into this, and whatever that means. And I think everyone got their own story, but I think there are so many ways of succeeding, so many ways of doing it. I think it's more about like finding whatever your way is, and try to achieve that, and try to sort of avoid or stay away from the silver bullets that worked for someone
Right.
else.
Yeah. There are no playbooks that work for everybody. All right. So I wanted to ask you, because I went obviously to the platform and I saw that you seem to be completely sales driven. So there is no way to actually go and try the product, for me, if I want to look how it looks like from the inside.
Mm.
So why did you decide to go that way? Because, well, on one hand, yes, you're catering to way bigger enterprises that sometimes enjoy some white glove service and hand holding. But on the other hand, maybe there could be potentially a way to just streamline the process for a smaller company if you added some PLG motion there. So what was the
Mm.
thought process behind that decision?
I think there are a number of different things. Like when we got started, you always got your sort of heritage with you, right? Your legacy, where you started from. And I think for us, it was very much like we felt we got more feedback, more direct feedback loops when talking to people. And I think we were not really comfortable with doing it fully like online. Felt like we would be guessing a bit more and sort of delaying that feedback loop. So I guess with a different background, you could probably reason the other way around, right? So, but I think that was one thing for us, like where we got started. On the other hand, I think for many companies, so what we're doing is, I mean, sometimes you talk about ERP systems, even though they are a bit old and clunky, that it's like switching out both heart and lungs of a company. And that is a very mission critical product. And I think we are sort of along that line as well. And there's really not that many people who would like their heart replaced and say, what I'd first like to do is really look at the heart and sort of go in and out, right? So I do think it depends a bit on like what you're offering and what you're doing. And I think for most like CFOs that we target, the big value for them is to have everything in our solution. So they have everything in one place. They have control of all their contracts, all the recurring revenue, all their pay-as-go transactions, and really have that one source of truth. And you don't really get that by toying around, right? So I think that is another reason as well, that for many of our customers, it's not only a product, it's also a change. And how do you do that change? Well, typically you want some best practice. And up until now, we feel like we're best serving that. And they expect from us that we should serve them that as well. So then we're doing it. So quite pragmatic and customer oriented in that sense. However, I do want to say I don't think it has to be either or as well. Mm-hmm. So I think we definitely have parts that we want to go more, how to say, like PLG influenced at least. And I think like the same way we see like in retail, where you can do part of your buyer journey in the store, part of it online, part of it somewhere else. I think we're seeing the same thing around SaaS and software as well, right? So there might be one channel doing the first sort of purchase, and then it could be an upsell being done another way. And, so I really think it doesn't have to be so black and white. And I think for us, it's also, we're gonna do more PLG motion. I think we have parts of it like time to value, for instance. It's quite important in PLG, and that we also talk a lot about. So we're cherry picking right now.
Yeah.
And I think that like the market for sort of get going quickly and get paid for your highly standardized subscriptions, that is very, very full. We don't really see why we need to go there. But if you look at the market for companies who have more like, how do you say, more complex, you may say, contracts, where you have recurring revenues, where you have pay-as-you-go components, where you have enterprise deals, that's where we fit in, and we don't see that as full.
Okay.
So a long answer.
No, that's
it would be great if you could always just like say, okay, let's have a PLG motion, and then we can be two people, and the ARR would just kick off. And yeah, I think you have to map it to your market and your customers and what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, well, it is a nice kind of trend, the whole bootstrapping lean teams, two co-founders just shooting to the stars. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. First of all, you need to understand what you're building and who you're building it for. Maybe for your real market, it doesn't really make sense. But also, I think a lot of companies that started as PLG and now understand that they have to dip their toes into sales-led motion to just go a little bit more up market, to find bigger tickets. The sales led takes more time, takes more people, and that's also something that I wanted to ask you. Again, recently everyone's talking about the fact that it's more difficult to access capital, that sales cycles are getting longer. So have you seen a trend there? Was there anything that surprised you? Like, for example, one of the founders I talked to, he said, well, the first 4 years of the company, we could definitely rely on HubSpot kind of predicting our sales cycles. And the last 4 years, it was always off because it was sometimes faster, it was sometimes slower. But the fact was that it was always off. So something is going on. So what about you? How did the whole macroeconomic situation affect you guys?
Yeah, I think we had pretty everyone talks about 2021 being sort of at the peak, right? And I think that extended a bit into 2022 from how we experienced it as well. But then we definitely saw a drop in 2022, the latter part. And I think I think it somehow continued a bit as well up until last year around June, and then been picking up. So now we're on a good in a good direction again. That's pointing upwards. But we definitely saw that, and yes, a bit of both. Both that you're seeing your win rates go down, not necessarily losing to competitors, but I think no decisions became very very much more common. But I think we've tried to keep our sort of sales funnel, thanks to our people working with sales, that they've kept it really honest. So we've had good quality of the sales funnel as such. I think it's been quite predictable. I think it's been very much in line with the market as well and our performance. But then also the nurturing, all of that sort of pre-sales process didn't give as much either. It felt like everyone was trying to do nothing for quite some time. I think it's getting better. Previously we were very much about when you're growing, you really need to have control of your subscription, so you know what you're doing, that you're not losing out on anything, that you do good customer service and all of that. But I think we're also seeing now, okay, if it's getting a bit tougher, you don't have the money to invest in sales, and sort of overspend. You have to be more diligent. It makes a lot of sense to be in control of your customers and their subscriptions and their recurring revenue and their agreements in order to do a great job with your existing customer base as well. And I think that is becoming more and more apparent for more companies as well. So it feels like we are blessed with that, being in quite a good spot, even though it's bad times, even though I think they are getting better.
Okay, all right. So, what about building the relationship and the whole, qualifying the leads and getting to the sale part? Because that's also really difficult, and the bigger the ticket, obviously, the more difficult it gets. So, in your case, you guys are working with huge companies. So, is there any, I don't know, tips, tricks for other founders that are looking into that direction? How to go after the companies that really suit you and your company and your product and the culture that you're growing, and also how to basically build that relationship toward a sale?
Yeah. I do think what has helped us is that what we talked about a bit before as well, staying very true to our ICP, because not only does it affect product, what you're building and all of that, but it also affects your knowledge, right? your people's knowledge about the product, but your people's knowledge about the domain, your people's knowledge about the personas that you're meeting or interacting with. And I think it takes time, right? We typically expect our people to come in and then they should be, fluent talking to CFOs and occasionally the CEO and occasionally someone doing product and occasionally someone, doing the CRM system. And yeah, it's complicated. It's difficult. So I think like building that knowledge and allowing that to take some time and maybe also like, okay, how to gather that knowledge. We quite early on created a customer acquisition playbook we use Notion, but I guess like whatever kind of wiki style would do. And it was basically very free. Like if you're going to use this, you also have to give something back. And then there were no rules, basically, more than people should contribute. I think that helped us a lot in the beginning. One thing is learning, but the other one is like, how do you share those learnings and that knowledge in a good way? Maybe that's a thing. Start like documenting, but also documenting in a smart way that is being used. I guess that document that was once written and then put somewhere where no one finds it won't really help anyone, right? But I guess that's quite common as well. And I think like knowledge, like there may be different sales depending on where you are in your life cycle and sort of how much brand and support you have. And I think for us, it was very crucial in the beginning that our salespeople could relate to our customers on a very deep level and sort of provide them with solutions and perhaps new thinking in some cases as well. As as the product is maturing, as the market is maturing, as the brand is getting better, you can do it a bit differently. But I think that's been crucial for us.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that. It's interesting also that you mentioned Notion and not some complex knowledge hub. So another question that I wanted to ask, because I know, or at least that's something that was true a couple of months ago, you're on the way to profitability right now, and Notion, well, it's a lot of bootstrap companies are also using it, right? So it's not kind of a super expensive, overpriced tool that, well, VC funded companies would go for, or usually would go to. That's the stigma, the prejudice around it, right? Let's just dip there a little bit. So on the way to profitability, are there any, again, tips, tricks that you're using to get there faster? Maybe there is a way you try to cut cost for your operational activities. Like, what are your biggest growth levers on the way to profitability?
Yeah, as you say, I guess you can see it from two angles. One is growth, and the other one is cost. But from a growth perspective, we've had an idea of like, okay, so we want to go from A to B, and how do we want to do that? And then we had two different scenarios, and we tried to sort of stay with one scenario, and that was having a really, really niched ICP and then do geographical expansion. That was basically our growth tactic. And I think we've stuck with that, and we've been doing that. Last years we've been entering new markets, and now we're penetrating those markets. But once again, I think we reasoned based on our company and our situation and what we thought was best for us. We tried to avoid like those silver bullets, and I guess one would be like don't expand too quickly, right? And we felt like, we think we should expand now, and then let's see, if that was right or wrong, right? So I think like having an idea and model that, I think we always had quite a lot of models on how we want to grow and how we want to build our company, and quite a few spreadsheets along the way. And probably the same for other people as well. It doesn't always end up the way you plan, but you got somewhere, right? And then you do a new one. On the cost side, I think it's actually quite difficult in that sense, because for us, the majority of our cost is people, right? And we just talked about like building knowledge, and that takes time. You can, of course, cut. I mean, we've seen a lot of cost cutting things the last few years, and that can, of course, help if you want to, shape your figures in a different way. We've done parts of it, but I think we've been focusing mainly on like performance and on our plan, and sort of how can we make more with what we have? How can we get better? But I haven't really found any tricks. It sounds like you find a good trick and then you just do it and then it's done. I think it's hard, and I think it's like these decisions that you shouldn't take lightly either. I think it's maybe avoid the quick tricks.
That's
that
also a
maybe that's the trick. But yeah, we've tried to be very, very transparent as well, like with both like budgeting, planning, and actuals, as a way of having everyone on board in what I would say like both good and bad times, right? So um, I think that helps with having an organization that is quite, I would say, like quick to react.
Mhm.
Um, Not the real trick either, but I think that could, of course, like okay, we need to hold back on costs, and
Mhm.
you have an organization who does that. That really really helps. Yeah, but it's hard. You don't want to waste what you've built up either,
That's
and
true.
you don't want to sort of waste money along the way. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the trade-off.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Okay. Interesting. All right. So it's interesting that you mentioned, international expansion, because I guess that's what you're doing right now. You moved to the US, right?
yeah,
Is it because you're penetrating this new market? Because I think a lot of EU startups struggle at first with international expansion. It's a bit of a different culture. The market
mm,
is a lot more saturated in the US, so I see a lot of companies just trying to go, like you said, market by market, country by country. So what made you go after US, except for the money?
yeah.
And yeah, how is it going? I mean, what are the learnings so far?
Yeah, there were many things in this, but I think like the learning so far from the US is, it is vast country, and like we've always been really good at finding sort of small ponds where we can be a big fish, right? And sort of having that strategy, and I find that to be even more challenging in the US to find those smaller ponds and where we can sort of have some network effect. So but I still think that it's a learning. Don't necessarily treat it as US. Maybe treat like one city, or one state, or make it smaller. Because I think like our way of doing it has been like go early and go small. You know, don't make this huge one-off investment that is either it's gonna fly and it's gonna be a super super success, or it's gonna die. We've gone with like go early, go small, and then a bit like dream big and expect nothing. I think that is also. I mean, you have to dream, right? I mean, you have to have ambition. You have to go, but I think like especially when it comes to like planning, when cash budgets, all of that, like expect nothing. Be prepared that it will take time, that it will cost, all of that, and then endure, don't give up, learn and adjust. So that's sort of how I see it. And it took us a few quarters to get around with things like we want to, extend what we're already doing. We don't want to create a separate company. Don't want to create a separate product. We want to extend on what we're already doing. And then building trust and building a brand is not easy, but it's very, very important that we establish trust with our personas and our customers. So we're doing a lot of both networking, events, the typical, cold outreach. We're doing the inbound. We're doing more or less all all the different parts, right? And I think it's going well, and I think we really saw it take off in Q4. So far so good. What I'm most sort of happy about is that our offering and our product is really doing a good job, and then we have to work on being building our brand and things like that. But I'd rather have it that way than the other way around. But I also wanted to say that you said something about European startups often don't do it to struggle. I think European companies, especially if it's around like finance or other regulatory things, if that's a component, I think there's an advantage in that, right? So I usually say that we come from a super super small country up in the north of Europe, where you basically have to, depending on your what you're doing. But for us, there was no real option saying we're going to be a Swedish company. There's not enough. So we had to have that in our DNA from the beginning, that we're going to be international or global. And I think what you have, if you just like go to, like in our case, like the Nordics, Denmark, Norway, and then if you go into Europe, I mean, it's not that far, and people usually trade with each other and all of that, but you still have differences, and you have to figure out how to work with localization, how to deal with that. And I think that is a real strength that you're building up. And I think that is something that we're taking with us when we're going also to the North American market and say, okay, we're really good at, this. I think there is a great opportunity for a lot of European companies in that sector. On the other hand, all US companies, they have such a huge domestic market, right? So if they find product market fit, they can just pour resources on that and grow super, super, super quick. But I think like when they get to go to other countries, they have real difficulties because they are so like shaped for doing the North American market.
Okay.
So yeah, find things to leverage, I guess.
Right, that's true. That's also
Is the
very true.
thing.
And I really
Yeah,
like how
yeah.
you said, it's better to have a great product and then kind of build the brand awareness and your marketing, your growth strategy on top of that than the other way around. I think that's very true. So one more question that I wanted to ask, because you're VC backed, right? And well, for pretty much every VC backed company, the route is to the exit. So were you building from the beginning with an exit in mind? And if that's kind of your case, then how are you preparing the company for, a potential exit when the time is right? Because, some say, hey, you have to start building relationships with potential acquirers early on, or, you have to make sure that your documentation is fine and in one place and no one has to struggle when you have to show it to somebody. So what's your take on this?
When it comes to the first part, like we're building with XML, I think when we started out, we were very aligned that this is not our entire lifetime, and then we pass it on to our children. That's not the kind of company, right? So of course there is some sort of exit at some point. But on the other hand, we've been quite clear that we don't have an exit strategy, because I think that would quite easily consume us, just thinking about the exit. And I mean, there's nothing that will get better with our company when we're thinking about an exit, right? So we try to avoid that, and we've been focusing a lot on building a great company, and then figuring like great companies are bought, not sold. Someone said, and we're trying to sort of adhere to that. But I think there are parts of it that are pretty much the same, at least to me. So for instance, like we try to have work really simply. So when it comes to like accounting and things like that, we try to not do any special stuff. Just play it super simple, and that's one case. We do have some experience, so we try to, of course, keep documentation of what's really needed, like contracts, whether it's with employees or subcontractors or clients, and keep that in order. But in general, I think we're mainly focusing on like building a great service, serving our customers, and growing the business. And I think that's probably worth more than the exact structure of any documentation or anything else. And I don't think we're experts in that either. So I guess that's another thing as well. Like let's try to focus on what we're good at as well. And then we try to use Younium as well, right, ourselves. So, we have quite good structure of one of our most important assets. I think that is also my tip. Maybe slightly biased, right? But I think that's a good thing.
Just a tad.
Yeah.
But all right, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Building a great product and then having leverage with that product over any offer that you're getting and over any kind of pressure from a potential acquirer is the best thing that a founder could find themselves in. So I think the best strategy is to focus on the product, and that to, when the time is right, come to an exit to be bought, but not have to actively sell your company.
I would assume as well, like from an investor perspective, you would be looking for, great companies and focusing on like what they're doing and the customers they serve and how that is working. I guess that's the basis for everything. So I mean, seems like a good priority.
Yes, that's true. I mean, that's exactly what we're focusing on with saas.group as well, because, it's good if you have everything in one place, and it's good if you, do due diligence for your own company every year. But that could be easily, worked around if the company is right, if the customers are great, if the product is great. So, product is probably the biggest focus for any founder. All right, so just a couple more questions, the usual ones here. And the first one is the biggest win and the biggest failure. Could be for you personally as a founder or for Younium.
Cool. I think you always need more wins than failures, right? But I think that more like a timeline. I think like the first real deal, that was up until then the biggest win, and I will always have that with me, the feeling after. In general, I think it's, the biggest win is that we have a team that cares about each other, works hard, and has fun. We spend a lot of time doing this. So I think that is super important. And then more recently, I also have to say that we mentioned it before, but seeing sort of the market trend a bit broken for us around June last year, and we got our biggest deal so far. That was also very like important milestone for us, because it's one thing to sort of manage what you can manage, but manage like macro economy, that's like, okay, that's difficult. You have to sort of play along, and you can't really, you can only do so much about it. So I think that's great. Like failure, I think you of course have a lot of failures, and you have to get up and all that. But I think the thing that's sticks with me at least is like, people as well. When people end up in bad spots, and I think like in our case, like having high growth and having very ambitious people sometimes lead to too much work and not enough recovery. So that I think is, that's a failure.
Okay.
But it's not like a one-time thing. I think it's more like something to be cautious about. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we just recently had a live session about healthy high performance and how sometimes it's difficult, especially in rapidly growing companies and in startups, and also
Yeah.
because the hustle culture was so
Yeah.
sexy for so many years. So yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
the last question is for a hack. So any hack that you could share? You said there are no tips and tricks, but maybe there is just one somewhere
Yeah.
stored. Something
Yeah.
could be,
Yeah.
completely unconventional, but works for you.
I think like what has worked for me is actually two things, but like one is, quite actively set some time aside to think about progress, because often we set like targets, and often we set very ambitious targets, and sometimes we set targets like, okay, in 10 years we're gonna be great, or in 5 years, and it's like sometimes they are very far away, sometimes they are super ambitious, and you sort of risk never having any wins. And I think like just setting a time, having some time to think about like, where were we 6 months ago and where are we now, and look at that in isolation, and typically you will see quite a lot of progress and quite a lot of good things that has happened. And I think that is quite a good exercise to sort of balance the chasing after all the targets all the time. It's probably good. And I think it's also been quite good, also within the company. So typically like having, every 6 months or something, a recap. Okay, so what's the summary? Because everyone is very occupied with, here and now, typically on some problem that needs to fix, and hammering down, and just taking that time, I think is quite good to get a sense of accomplishment as well. And then I think like the real biggest hack is what you also mentioned before, but I think like sleep exercise, that's super super boring, but I can definitely relate to the hustle culture, and it's all kind of being you know impressive if you're able to not sleep so much, and that has to be the most stupid thing ever invented. But
Thank you. Somebody said that.
yeah, I think, I mean, of course you I think it sort of ends up with like being the opposite, like being if you sleep you're lazy. I think that's very very simplified. I don't think it's true either. But most of the things we're doing is, one part is doing things at volume and maybe doing reach outs, maybe, whatever we're doing. But the other thing is also thinking, right?
Sure.
So I don't know anyone being able to do a lot of good thinking without sleeping. So that I've been focused on. That's like the last 2 years that I figured that out. So it took me some 40 something years. So I wish someone else will get to that earlier than I did.
Hopefully. I mean, it's getting
Yeah.
discussed, a lot more at conferences, at podcasts, and I think it's a very good kind of emerging trend. That you don't have to work 24/7 and make your team guilty for not doing that as well along with you, because you're a startup and you have this big goal.
Yeah, that's not the company that I want, at least. So it relates to the previous thing as well. I think that would be a failure, and at the same time I do think that we are super super ambitious, and we're doing that is not like, that's not a problem. It will, a lot of good things will be done anyways, and I think like smarter things will be done as well. So yeah, hopefully we can change that.
All right. Well, I'm really excited to see how you're growing and where you will be in a year with your big new deals and changing the way you work maybe into a healthier flow for entire team. But thank you so much for sharing this story. I think it's great. I think that the a problem that you're solving is very valid, and yeah, thanks for the insights about building the product first and making it reliable and good for the customers that you're serving before building a brand, before doing all the shiny big things. So thank you, Niclas, for sharing your story here.
Thank you, Anna. It's great being here.
Yeah, anytime, and take care.
Take care.